Wait, let's go. Let's just go. Hold on, I gotta fix my hair. I need chapstick, and I need it now. Okay. I gotta get my notes. I need notes nowadays. Let me get my notes. There's a lot been going on, you know what I'm saying? Let's get it. Bam, bam, bam. Hey y'all, and welcome back to the channel. If you know what you know, I haven't posted a long form video on this channel in almost 2 years. Definitely not because I ran out of ideas, but because my life required alignment and not just producing. So if you've been around long enough, you probably noticed that I stayed pretty consistent with the short form content, but it seemed like the long form videos kind of disappeared. And I want to be clear about why. I want to reveal some things. It's definitely not because I was unmotivated or unsure. What is my plant doing? I stepped back because I was doing a lot. I was doing too much. And I was still trying to lead while I was doing it. So if you're new here, you might not know, but if you're an OG, then you know that the past several years, I've ran into a lot of challenges in my life personally, as it pertains to family dynamics and relationships. And at the same time, I was very deep into perfectionism. Really overperforming, overproducing, giving too much of my time and energy and my resources to too many things at once. And the thing is that I told myself it was discipline. And maybe you can relate to this. And what do you know? Here comes the burnout. And burnout didn't happen all at once, it happened over time. It crept in quietly, and I kept thinking if I couldn't handle it, then I just wasn't strong enough. I wasn't disciplined enough. And there is a huge difference between burnout and discipline, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So somewhere during my burnout season, I realized something very important. I wasn't feeling disconnected from God because He left. I was feeling disconnected because I had moved away. And what does that really mean? That really means that I was trying to do things for God instead of doing things with God. And that's two very important distinctions, because it's really easy to do things for God and to serve Him and to think you're being obedient versus doing things with Him, knowing that He gives you the power and the ability to do the things that you need to do. I had definitely gotten that twisted. So even though my faith was still very strong, I still very much rely on God, lean on God, I still very much love spending time with Him, it slowly turned into me doing things for Him instead of Him doing the things with me. And so what really shifted things for me, first of all, mentally and physically, Assist was toast. Like literally toast. And while I still kept doing my coaching, I still kept doing my graphic design stuff, I was still doing life, but I was totally burnt out. And like I said, it crept in over time, so I didn't really notice it. And as I started feeling more and more tired, more and more worn out, I just kept thinking, oh, you gotta keep at it, you gotta stay disciplined, you gotta get stronger, you gotta keep going. And those things are all true, but when you're doing it for the wrong reason, or even at the right time, even if your priorities are off, burnout is sure to creep in. So you have to know when to be disciplined, when to take your rest, when to persevere. But in doing all that, you have to be very prayerful and considerate about the steps you're taking to get the things done. So what really helped make the shift for me was looking into the real life of Christ, what He did and how He moved. And you know I need my Bible, because these aren't just verses that we're quoting, we're actually looking at how Christ lived. So let's go to Hebrews. Let's go to Hebrews 12, verse 11. All right, so in Hebrews 12, we just got done looking at Hebrews 11 and all the heroes of the faith from the Old Testament, like Moses and Noah and Abraham and Sarah. So then in Hebrews 12, based on the faithfulness of the fathers of the faith, we go to Hebrews 12 and it says, therefore, since we have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every hindrance and sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. So Hebrews 12 tells us that we have to keep our eyes on Jesus. This is verse 2. who is the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And in verse 11, it says, no discipline seems enjoyable at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. So discipline is very different from burnout. And I definitely learned that lesson the hard way. And in Isaiah 53, where it prophesies about Jesus being the Messiah way before he was born, it says about Jesus, he was despised and rejected by man, a man of suffering who knew what sickness was. He was like someone people turned away from. He was despised and we didn't value him. Yet he himself bore our sicknesses and he carried our pains. But we in turn regarded him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. So in looking at the life of Christ, he's well acquainted with suffering. And in the New Testament, we see that because we're followers of Christ, we will also be afflicted with suffering. So we see from the Old Testament into the New Testament that not only was Christ afflicted with suffering, but as his followers, his people will also be afflicted with suffering because we live in this sinful world and we have him to look to as the hope for our endurance and our healing as we progress. And just reading more through the book of Romans, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I've been reading Romans and 1st and 2nd Peter and Hebrews for a while. So in just going through those scriptures, I realized something else that's very important. Discipline without God becomes punishment. My standards for myself are very, very high. I can be extremely disciplined to the point where it's actually punishment. But then grace without discipline becomes stagnation. So if you're constantly giving yourself grace, oh, you haven't been to the gym in 2 weeks, that's all right, it's fine, give yourself grace. If you keep doing that, you're actually not helping yourself. If you refuse to eat well because you're just not used to it and you just constantly want to give yourself grace, that's going to lead to negative things down the road. So yes, grace without discipline leads to stagnation. And also too, suffering without surrender turns into burnout. I could very easily sit down here, record 30 long form videos and then spend the rest of the week editing them all and get them all done. But that is just not necessary. It's not necessary for me to do that. I don't have to have my expectations so high to get everything done that I want to get done in a week over the course of 3 days. And when my expectations get out of control, I try to cram things together to feel like I accomplished a lot in a little bit of time. And that is not even necessary. That's just something I really have to surrender to God, because there are things that have happened in my life that have been real causes for suffering. There are things that I've wrestled with just personally, things that I'm wrestling with in my family. We got into a car accident early on in December. So there are still things that are happening that are just really mentally and emotionally sad or draining. And so I can't put more pressure on myself to perform, especially if those things are not really necessary to do right now. And I've talked about this so many times, this balance between discipline and grace. I talked about it a lot on Instagram. And like I said before, all throughout 2025, I slowly started riding this wave of having just a little bit too many expectations on myself at once. And then it turned into burnout. Like the little froggy in the pot, you know, he's just in there chilling, gets a little toasty, but then he gets used to it, gets a little bit toastier, but then he gets used to it, until finally, I mean, you know the end of the story, I don't need to say it, but before I got cooked, I hopped out of that pot, if you know what I'm saying. So this is how I rebuilt, and I really thought through this and wanted to make it like a clear framework so that if you're similar to me and you have really high expectations for yourself and you're not sure why, but you're also not sure how to surrender those expectations, I want you to listen to this. So obviously my initial idea was to fix everything at once, because that is just where my brain goes. But that is not the answer. It started with stewardship. Number one, I really had to start reconnecting with God in a different way. So I did some fasting, I did a lot of prayer, did a lot of scripture reading, and prioritizing just listening. So prayer, it's a two-way thing. Yes, it is you communicating with God, but it's also listening for what he's saying to you. And it doesn't have to be like a set time. You could talk to God at any time. He can speak to you at any time. But in the same way where when I really value a relationship, I want dedicated time with that person with no other distractions. It's so important for me to have a dedicated time when I'm talking to God. And that could be in the morning, that could be at night, it could be in the middle of the day. But as long as you have that dedicated time to talk to God and to hear from God, that is the start of everything. And this isn't about productivity. It's not about recording content. It's not about trying to multitask or habit stack. This is just dedicated time with your Lord and Savior. It's about presence. Number two is creating boundaries. And this can be hard for people, especially if you live with roommates or if you still live at home or if you have people who you have to work with day in and day out. This can be hard, but you have to do your part, especially if you have people in your close circles who are not as healthy. Maybe they don't recognize their own issues, or maybe they're just toxic. These are even boundaries that I needed to make with family members, people who wanted to be very close to me, maybe even friends who want more of my time that I don't necessarily always have. So the decisions are hard. I'm not gonna lie, setting boundaries is difficult, but it's for your health. If you are somebody who you take on too much, you give too much, this is an essential thing for you to learn. And it's not about being mean. You don't have to have a poor attitude when you're telling somebody no. You don't have to be sassy. It can just be like, hey, this is something that I would love to do, but I just can't take it on right now. Or, hey, I would love to help you with this, but something else on my plate is gonna have to get taken off because this is gonna require this much time and I only have this much time dedicated in my week. So just be honest depending on the situation, especially if it has to do with your job or your parents, close friends, the people who are closest to you. You want to definitely handle them with care, but you also want to be firm and stick to your boundary. And remember that peace doesn't always require explaining, especially if you're working with somebody who's toxic, who's unwilling to look at their own issues in their own life. You just set your boundary and say what you will and will not do, and that's it. Especially for toxic people, no is a complete sentence that ends in a period. Number 3 is I had to reset my training. For so long, I've loved lifting heavy, and I still love lifting heavy, I'm not gonna lie. But I do have a little bit of an injury right now, got a little hip thing going on, got a little low back tightness going on. A sis has her back brace on right now, okay, while I'm making this video, because we are about our healing. But I had to change up my training in a way that I wasn't ready to do. But because I value my body, because I value healing, and because I value all the things that come along with healing, I changed up my training. Instead of doing super heavy training, I'm focusing on mobility, calisthenics, and some time under tension work. Now, this is still very difficult. My workouts are still very intense. So I'm still getting up to RPE of 8, 9, or 10 in my training. So I'm still muscle building, still going through hypertrophy, and I'm actually really enjoying it. I actually feel less pressure to hit a certain amount of weight and know that I'm getting stronger, and I actually feel better about the kind of strength that I'm building, knowing that I'm supporting my recovery and that I'm not encouraging further injury. And this is also something that I help other women do, because as we go through life, or as we age, or as we develop different interests, our training styles should change. And a lot of times women don't know how to do that, especially if they struggle with things like anxiety or PCOS or endometriosis or depression. Sometimes switching up your training style and having training block plans will really help you get back into the groove of things so that you can continue to grow and be strong and not fall into these patterns of burnout or wondering what you should do next and just being confused and frustrated. Number 4 is really leaning into discipline and grace. So similar to what I talked about before, discipline is so important. We need it in every area of life, but we also need grace in every area of life. And we have to know how to balance those two things out for our full body wellness. So discipline is showing up, and grace is knowing when to rest without guilt. So like I said, especially if you're somebody like me, really high expectations, you always want the A+, you always want to do the extra credit, and you always want to excel and surpass all of your goals. Balancing discipline and grace, this tip is probably the biggest one for your mental reset. Outside of connecting with God and having that dedicated time, yes, so that's number 1. This would be number 2, because if you don't change how you're thinking about discipline and how you're thinking about grace, then your actions are not going to change, because your actions are fueled by what your thoughts are, and your actions produce results that then reinforce your original thoughts and beliefs. So you have to renew your mind, Romans 12. You gotta renew your mind in order to change your actions so that you get different results. So peeps, we are back. We're coming back, still talking about full body wellness. We're truly balancing discipline and grace in a brand new way, doing it practically. We're doing mind, body, spirit wellness. We're staying aligned with God. We're staying true to ourselves. We're setting boundaries. We're talking real fitness, sustainable, manageable fat loss, always muscle building because we love being strong, good food, high energy, and always getting into shenanigans. We're never gonna stop the shenanigans, okay? We're talking about faith without shame and discipline without burnout. So be sure to tell me in the comments what season you're in right now. Are you in a wrestling season? Are you in a resting season? Are you ready to grow, ready to be strong? I actually want to know how y'all are doing. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that now. Be sure to like this video. I do still have part 3 of my Reveal Clear Aligner journey that I have to post. I still have that footage. It's still going on. The journey continues, and I definitely want to let you all know how that journey has been going even up until today. So keep an eye out for that video because I think you're gonna enjoy it. It definitely got crazy. So go ahead and subscribe, and be sure to join my Revealed Healing VIP list. I give weekly updates. I'll let you know whenever I'm doing an event or a masterclass. I've done some in-person speaking events this last season, so that has been a lot of fun. And if you guys are ever in the area, or if I'm ever in your area, you definitely want to know that ahead of time so that you can have priority access to those kinds of events. So go ahead and join my VIP list, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!